Okay, today's video, we are going to talk about Angie's List, or Angies Leads as it's now actually called. Home Advisor, which is part of Angie's List or Angies Leads. Thumbtack, Houzz, Leads. Do they actually pay off, okay? It actually depends. Some of you guys, you can make a killing at it. Other guys are going to lose your ass. I'm going to differentiate what are the differences here. Namely, if you offer a cheaper service, you can make a whole lot of money with these services. If not so, you can lose quite a bit of money as well. So I'm going to explain though why that actually is. I have actual case study as the title of the video indicates, in that I actually have measured the difference between, since this is a channel about PPC, and technically Houzz has a PPC program, so it technically is, but measuring Google Ads versus these other services that I've kind of grouped together as a whole, you know, what is the difference in ROI on a single dollar, or, you know, a set amount of money that you invest into advertising for your business or leads for your business, how it would pay off one versus the other. Generally speaking, 90% of you guys who are watching this video, you're better off with Google Ads if you were just to follow the instructions that I give you on this channel about how to set up a campaign better than your competition. You do that, you're going to make way more money with that Google ad campaign and Bing search ad campaign than you ever are with these other services. The other 10%, maybe not so. But, and even basically in those 10% of cases, you could run Google Ads and run these other services and make money with both of them. So Google Ads if you do it right, there's no instance where for a local service business this is not going to be able to make you money. I haven't personally seen any of them that you can't make money if you just set it up right and you wait enough time for the ads to really break in, for the algorithm to see that your ads are really, really good, which might take 6 months or even a little bit longer for some of you guys, depending on how competitive your market is and how, more importantly, how expensive the cost per click is. Higher cost per click means it takes longer for the ads to work, given it takes a certain amount of clicks on your ads for Google to recognize that the ads are good and drop your cost per click considerably by almost 3x where you start out at, which is about what it actually is. Anyway, with that all said, the reason why the Google Ads is going to do better, I'm going to explain that, and then I'm going to get into what the actual ROI difference is between the Google Ads and these services, what the actual ROI from the services actually are, and where you're going to be able to make money from them. So with that said, we'll get into it. I work with dozens, just to let you know, I work with dozens of local service companies at our PPC agency. Work with about 3 or 4 dozen PPC clients at any given time. Some of them are e-commerce, some of them are local services, some are national services. We have about 10 at any given time that are in local service niches where we manage their Google Ads, but we also just manage PPC in general, which technically Facebook ads is still pay-per-click advertising, as is Bing ads, as is these other places, like I said, even like Houzz is. We manage online advertising basically for clients. It doesn't have to be, you know, it's not just Google Ads, even though that's our bread and butter here. Anyway, so having dealt with hundreds of companies since I started doing client work over 10 years ago, and hearing many, many stories from business owners where we talk about not just PPC, but we shoot the shit on, you know, business and the other types of things that they're using to generate leads. And as I first get in touch with clients to see if they need Google Ads or what it can do, they tell me about, you know, what else they're doing that's working, or how well it's working, or how well they think it's working. I get to hear about, you know, Angie's List, Home Advisor, Thumbtack and stuff from many, many, many different types of local service businesses. Many we never even work with because it just isn't a good fit. But I know pretty well what these services can do, where they work, where they don't work. And then of the ones that, you know, we work with, we get to and have had the opportunity to drill in and actually compare these services versus Google Ads, so the client actually knows, should I take the money from Angie's List and double down on Google Ads or not, or just should I shut it off now that Google Ads is working? And we do that analysis for the client and we move on, and most of the time it's yes, you should shut those other ads off. And maybe they run them for a period of time while the Google Ads is scaling up. That's fine, because they have to have so many leads coming in just to keep their head above water in terms of their overhead. Anyway, sometimes, occasionally, these lead services where you buy a lead, which that lead is sold to like 5 other people, it's not what they call non-exclusive leads. Sometimes those leads will pay off for the clients when I hear from the client how they're doing, or we go in and help the client run a cost-benefit analysis on those leads that they're buying. Most of the time, however, they're not getting a return at all, or it's close to break even. And the difference between whether it makes money or doesn't make money, I've basically distilled it all down to this one thing. If you have a service in which your differentiator is that you have the cheapest service in your category, then the service, or i.e. leads that these lead providers provide, actually are worth it and pay off. So if you have a way you've created some special process, or you've created a special way to reduce your costs somehow, to where you can offer a good quality service at a cheap price, absolutely you should try these services out, because guess what? These people, or if you haven't realized it already, the people who use these services are people who want a deal. It's very similar to how Groupon worked, and why Groupon was $1 billion company at one point, and now it's worth basically dog shit. People who go to Groupon to get a deal, or people go to Groupon, obviously, in that case, it's obvious they come to get a deal, but the people who come to get a deal aren't loyal to who they get a deal from. And that's how Groupon is actually set up in the first place. In that you're supposed to get a deal every day. So therefore, if you got a deal from a restaurant today and another deal pops up for another restaurant tomorrow, you're just going to go to the next restaurant. And you're not going to have that person, it's not even designed to create a loyal customer. With these services, it's not so much, directly obvious, but it's the same kind of thing. The person going to that site or using one of these services like Thumbtack, that's supposed to get you several quotes or whatever, it's not even designed to attract a user who wants to find one company that they're going to use forever. It's designed, of course, naturally, like Angie's List, you can see the reviews and that's what it's for, but that, at least the way that it was before. Nowadays, people don't realize it, but Angie's List is buying leads and scraping them off of Google and then sending them through Angie's List, and that's what you're actually buying, because so few people are actually going to Angie's List anymore because they use other places like Yelp or Google reviews for reviews. So ultimately, going back to what I was saying here before, if you have something that's inexpensive, or to go back to finish my thoughts on what I was mentioning before, people use these services many times because they just want to see what, to basically get a good price. Obviously, they don't want shit quality, but they're mainly there to get a good deal. Thumbtack specifically advertises you can get a good deal. These other sites have reviews, but overall, as we've actually proven through the data, and how well these leads convert, and the types of companies that they convert better for versus not, or less for, the people that do good with the leads are people that offer, by and large, a cheap service, which indicates the people going to these sites either are looking for a deal, or they're just attract the profile or type of user overall who is more price sensitive. And so that's the key thing that people need to know as they go into this, is if you don't sell, in other words, if you don't sell something cheap, you're probably going to have a difficult time closing enough business off of the leads you're getting to make the cost of the leads justified and actually make enough profit, or at least compared to what you can make with a Google ad. And if you offer quality, you damn well want to go after Google ads, because people looking for quality go and they type into Google, they find a website and they investigate the look of the website. Is the website designed well? If so, it's probably a more legitimate company. They're going to look at the reviews. They're going to see if you're BBB reviewed. All this stuff on your website. Whereas if you go through one of these other services, there's not as many reviews there at the very least, and there's just not as much information about the company there. It doesn't say how long you've been in business necessarily. And so therefore, naturally, the person who would use an Angie's List gives a shit less about these other things that people who want higher quality care about, and they can't because it's not actually there to look at. You're going to get a lower end customer through these services. And that's what you're essentially buying. There's a time and a place for a person who wants a cheap deal, but if you can't deliver on cheap, you probably ain't going to be wanting to mess with these leads. So that's the skinny on this whole thing, okay? But there's a lot more to it than that. If you want to know where this actually works well, we did have a client who was a caterer, okay? So we're going to get started into the case study sections here. We had a caterer who did real well with Thumbtack specifically, okay? Specializing in cheaper meals. So what they did, instead of, there's high-end caterers, there's middle and low-end and stuff, but what this guy did was create a meal list that caters to people who want not to say bargain, but a good value, we'll just say. Obviously, if you go to catering, is damn expensive a lot of times. But he created a whole menu around budget items that could be, the raw materials were cheap. And so, with that, they could, sorry about the background noise, they had things like grilled cheese, macaroni and cheese, stuff like almost kids would eat because it's so damn cheap and you're broke and you have young kids. That's the type of stuff you feed them. But, they did that. And so, but that put them in position to be able to automatically offer a good price and still offer a good quality product, even though these products are cheap. It still tastes good or tastes good enough. And so, when all the other leads or companies that they're competing against that also get these same leads, like I said, it's not an exclusive lead. You're getting a lead 10 other people are getting potentially. You actually seem like the better, more obvious option, a higher proportion of the time compared to the other people. So therefore, what Angie's List, what Thumbtack's selling the leads for, you're getting a higher return per lead, which means you get a higher ROI than anybody else. And with Thumbtack, Angie's List, and so forth, only being able to charge so much for a lead before nobody buys it anymore, you're basically putting yourself in position to actually make money from these leads, whereas most everybody else makes a little or makes none, just like Google Ads. If you're doing Google Ads, most of the people don't make much money, if at all, make any profit on Google Ads. 20% make the lion's share of the profit. Google set things up that way so that it encourages people to do a better job with their ad click-through rates, their conversion rates on their landing page. And I've talked about this in other videos. So he made out like a bandit running their whole business just on these Thumbtack leads. Because they got it down to a science. He said that if you answer quick, like lightning quick, you get a lead, you immediately respond, and you push right away that you're offering a cheap price because that's what the people want, the closing rate's good. Closing rate's like 1 in 5 or better on these leads. Whereas, if on the flip side, some of these other companies that I've analyzed that we ultimately ended up working with, the closing rate on those leads, whether they realized it or not, sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't really, you're talking about 1 in 10 or even 1 in 20 of the leads closing. When you didn't come up with a creative way to have a better value or offering to where you can be the cheapest one in your space without having your margins being affected. And which that kind of close rate, even though the lead's cheap, takes you 15 leads, that's not a great deal anymore. And the margin is important. So if you have to lower your prices to close these jobs on Angie's List leads or Thumbtack leads or Houzz leads, you're going to sabotage yourself in other ways So you might say, oh, Corey, we'll just lower our price for the Angie's List leads. We'll have our other services at regular prices. So we can close, instead of 1 in 17 leads, we can close 1 in 6. And we'll take a lower margin, a lower profit margin on those leads, so that we at least can, make that work, make the leads from Houzz work, so to say. But you're gonna end up that doesn't work, and here's why. If you have a way to create an edge that makes you more efficient to where you have similar margins as you had before, these leads can be a godsend. But if you have to lower your prices and as a result of that have lower margins, what you're going to end up having, you're not going to notice it right away, is it's going to be too damn hard to keep your staff, because you're going to have to pay them less money, unless you're going to, of course, pay, let's just say realistically speaking, if you had to rely, or just to clarify here, if most of your leads were coming from these sources, or all of your leads coming from these sources, obviously you're going to have a lower margin, right? Well, naturally with that, you're probably going to have to compromise your people's pay, your employees' pay. And with as hard as it is to keep a worker now, you can't do that anymore. It used to be you could chisel down your people, and then so that you were cheaper, and so you could be competitive in these realms where you get these leads and it's a dog-eat-dog environment. That's not going to work anymore. If you aren't paying competitive pay that's in the top, quintile or top quarter of your market, you're going to have high turnover, and your life's going to be hell. And it's not even going to be worth it. You could make money easier and faster doing something else. But now that's not the worst part. The worst part that people get caught up on, that they don't realize as they go into trying to do this, lower their margins so that they can be competitive in these spaces, getting leads from these places, is you're going to end up getting more bad reviews. Which is actually pretty funny if you think about it, because I've seen this time and time again. A person would have their fees. We had a client who had their fees at one cheaper price point for a while, and this is just found out through conversations with that client years back that they had. They've told me that as soon as they raised their prices higher, they had far less complaints. And I was thinking, that does make sense. Then I also had somebody who told me that, and this person had a 4-figure priced product. Like, I'm not going to be able to list the exact product here. And he sold that product, and his reviews at that company were always really good. But one thing he noticed is if he checked out the reviews of the competitor that sells a 3-digit price point product that's in that same category, the reviews were horrible. All the cheap people that naturally bitch more, that go for the cheaper product, they're the ones, a certain percentage of them are going to leave bad reviews, and then naturally you're going to stack up a bunch of bad reviews. Those eventual bad reviews are going to cut down your conversion rate on your traffic that you're getting to the site, which then potentially are going to have to make you cut your prices even more, and then you got to down and down you go down this spiral down the toilet. On the flip side, if you just paid a lot or charged a lot, and you had good, quality materials, and you had good quality employees that give a good experience and act lively as they deal with your customers and so forth, the reviews you get are good, and you have a higher conversion rate, which allows you to be able to then, because your marketing cost is less as a percentage of your sales, you can offer more to deliver on that, and everything just works to your advantage. So on one hand, you can go the route where you try to be competitive with the people that are cheap or cheaper in your category, and end up having to fight bad reviews, or you could just charge more and naturally just get good reviews. And let me tell you, the long term, those bad reviews, they're going to completely eat into your company. I've seen clients that told me before that once their site had so many bad reviews, they had to shut the whole business down. It literally destroyed. It was in the, remember a client specifically in the data recovery space. You know, like if your hard drive, if your computer fails and you need to get the files off your hard drive, you know, people would send their hard drives in and expect to get the files back, and if they couldn't get them back, the person would just leave a bad review. Get enough bad reviews, nobody will buy from you anymore. Then you just start a company all over again to try it again, and with that, the easiest way to avoid all those bad reviews is just simply don't be the cheap one in your space. Don't be the guy who tries to compete on price, in other words. If you do that, the cheap assholes, which are also almost all completely the ones that bitch, they expect a lot for a little. I don't understand why, psychologically, why the people that pay so little expect so much. That's just the way that it is. You end up lowering your prices to make these leads work. You're going to end up with bad reviews long term, and that might actually be the death of your company, literally speaking, just with that one, or should I say little mistake. And you won't understand necessarily why it's happened. But you take the high road, which is going to be harder. Of course, you have to deliver on a good product or service if you're charging more, and that's going to be harder to put together, but you're building your house on a firm foundation then. So anyway, you don't want to cheapen your product or service just to be able to make these leads work. If you could create a new product line or new service line that allows you to offer quality for a cheap price, if you will, you might be able to do this. But generally speaking, unless your whole business is predicated on cheaper products or cheaper services or cheaper products, I wouldn't even dabble in any of these leads at all, because it's just a problem waiting to happen with the reviews. Or get another company started that just deals with these other places. So if it all goes wrong, you don't affect your main customer base, your business that you spent blood, sweat, and tears to build up. So that's all I'll say about that. We'll move on past that. So moving forward, if you don't have a cheap product, now what are the results that you can get from that, and why isn't it going to work? Obviously, other than the fact that you're going to have bad reviews, from a higher percentage of bad reviews coming from these places that have a higher percentage of bargain shoppers. The actual ROI on it is not that hot anyway. It just sounds like a good deal because the leads are so cheap. They're like $20 a lead. Oh, great. But they're preying on people's ignorance. If you really drilled down into the numbers, you would actually see the cost-benefit analysis or profit margin you're making on these leads isn't that great. But that's how a lot of things in marketing is sold. I'd say 80% of the marketing services out there and advertising that you can buy out there is sold based upon it's cheap, therefore it seems like it's a good value. Because most people in this space, unfortunately, they don't care about spending a lot on marketing and advertising. They don't. They just want cheap. They want cheap, and they want the salesperson to tell them it's a good quality thing and it being cheap, and then they get scammed. And then they go on to something else and say, the last person scammed me, I don't want to be scammed. And then get scammed again and scammed again. And they keep repeating the same mistakes, which is insanity, repeating the same thing over and over again. When reality is, they need to take a step back and say, okay, if I'm going to find something that's not a scam, what is it that I'm doing wrong? Which is, they're trying to go for something that's cheap. There's no free lunch. Anything that's good isn't going to be cheap. You're going to have to spend a lot of money for something quality that's going to work. So ultimately, the leads are not, it's not what it seems. And if the leads were really that good, they're not going to be charging $20 a lead. They're getting people to think the leads are cheap, therefore if every lead doesn't convert, it's okay because it's cheap, and you're much, much, much better off spending more for the leads and get better quality leads, not just because the initial cost to generate that job is going to be less, which I'm going to show you here, but also because the customer is worth more in the long run to you as well. Not just from them being probably going to leave you a good versus a bad review like I talked about, but they're not going to they're going to come back and buy from you at a higher rate. You're going to have repeat sales from the person at a higher rate if you ultimately went somewhere else other than what, these services that are they're mostly generating a one-time customer for your business, and that's it. So anyway, for the case study here that I'm going to mention, we had a client in the electrical services space. This is like where you have an outlet that needs to be fixed or a light fixture. You hire the electrician, they come into your house and they fix stuff. It's also for businesses as well. If you have a broken freezer, they come in and they'll help you fix it. We did a direct side-by-side comparison of our Google ads that we help clients manage and the Angies List that they were doing at the time. For these leads, we were getting about $50 cost per lead on Google ads. Of that, about 1 in 3 leads closed into business when they called. So we had about $150 cost per job. I put cost per lead, but cost per job off of Google ads, okay? Now, for Angie's List, on the other hand, leads were $20 a lead. So this is where the deception comes in. They say, oh, it's $20 a lead. I'm paying $50 a lead on Google ads. Fuck Google ads. I'm just going to go with Angie's List. And then they get finessed or famoosed, if you want to say that. $20 a lead for Angie's List, but if you go into the call logs, 1 in 12 of the leads close. So that one difference in close rate, which is the big tell, turns $150 cost per job on average to $240 cost per job. Big difference, 25% cost per job difference roughly. But that's not it. That's just the start of it, actually. There's other shit that makes it even a worse deal, other than the fact that even on the front end the math doesn't work. If you're smart enough to actually analyze lead close rates, which 90% of service businesses aren't going to do, which is why Angie's List can get away with premising their whole business and the value they're providing on being cheap leads that you don't have to pay for until you actually got the lead, if you will. Whereas Google Ads isn't pay per lead, it's pay per click, and most businesses that have no cojones, if you want to say that, don't want to pay for just a click because I want to pay for a lead, not a click, and then end up paying way more for a lead and get a way shittier class of customer as a result of that fallacy. The other things that are going to screw you over is that it's going to take more sales resources to close that job than it did to close the Google Ads job. Because just with the numbers, how much time does it take to deal with somebody to close them? Take that number times 4, and that's going to be what your cost to close every job is when you're talking about Angie's List versus Google Ads. And not only that, it's not just 4 times as much time in terms of salesperson's time to close a job, because it's 4 times as many people to close a job. The people coming in from Angie's List are going to ask a shitload of questions in comparison to Google Ads, because with Google Ads, the person has went to our website and they've been able to look through our website, which if the website's built right, there's everything that they basically need to know is there. So they call when they're ready to buy. I'm ready to buy. My address is blah, blah, blah. Versus Angie's List, oh, how long, you've been in business. All this other shit that could have been done on your website. So you've got that extra time. So it can take twice as long to close somebody. It takes 4 times as many leads. So you're talking about 8 times the salesperson's resources per job than what Google Ads takes. And when you're talking about, some of you guys, your salesperson's sitting on their hands all day long. For other you guys, you're in a position right now that when your leads come in, you can't answer the phone or you can't answer all the leads right away. And obviously, if you have a lot of leads and the leads come in batches or come in chunks, you can't get to a lead right away. And the fact that you can't get to the lead right away, it's going to close at a lower rate. You can see how this also translates into lower close rates, which also translates into lower ROI as well. the slower you respond to the lead, the less the ROI is going to be, because people are only going to wait so long before somebody else gets them. And in the situation, in the Shark's Tanks, which is what Angie's List is, you got 10 people all trying to get for that customer as soon as the lead's created. Who do you think is going to get it if you don't have time to answer the lead right away? Which is why this guy said, who was making it work, you had to answer the leads right away for it to work. So anyway, the whole sales resource element is a whole other factor to consider, whether these leads are worth a damn or not to your business, or worth less than other things like Google Ads. The second additional thing I should say, the SEO. I mentioned just on my last video again. Half of the profit, basically, you're going to make from Google Ads, you're going to make it from the organic clicks, SEO clicks, if you want to call it that you're going to get as a byproduct of running those Google Ads, as long as you're over like a $3K a month budget or higher. Why? Because when you run the Google Ads, you're automatically going to raise the authority of your website, because part of what gets your site to rank is just having a lot of traffic coming into your site, because that indicates authority to Google. You got people coming to your site, and then later on they're going to come back to your site, so they're going to type in your brand name, and Google keeps track of how many times people type in your brand name to see how big of a brand you are. And so naturally, the more business you do through Google Ads, the more that they're going to want to rank you for organically, and they go hand in hand. The more you basically spend on Google Ads, the more your free organic traffic is going to go up. It's the same thing on any other, on Bing, on Amazon. It's all the same thing. You spend on ads, you get organic. So if you buy these leads, you're not getting that any of the benefit of the organic traffic. And eventually, if you shut your ads off with Google Ads, that organic traffic will stay strong. Not forever, but for a good chunk of time. So you're not actually even buying anything. Or it's almost like they got you addicted to like a drug to their leads. If you ever stop, your business immediately stops. Versus with the website, you're building up a long-term asset that can stand on its own. But let alone you're building an asset, not building an asset, you're saying, well, if the leads work, I would never stop buying the leads, so what difference does it make? The return is just going to be less, because there's no subsidization of the leads through the organic traffic you're going to get. Google's never going to rank you more and get free organic traffic by buying these leads from Angie's List or Thumbtack that Google owns. Whereas you will get it with Google Ads. Okay? So that's another element to consider. Another element to consider, lower lifetime value. As I touched on before, the bigger factor here is to consider, even if the leads were profitable and they were the same cost as other leads that you're getting through Google Ads or wherever, the percentage of time these people come back through these other sources is going to be automatically basically lower than what you're going to get from another source, because these sources are like a one and done, like use it and toss it type of thing. It's not meant to generate somebody who's looking for a long-term service provider and are really going to do the research on a company, because they know when they do business with that company, they're going to stick with it long-term, and they're not going to want to switch. They would want to do the proper research to find the best person and then stick with the best person. Versus, I want a decent deal, give me the cheapest price, I don't give a shit who it is, I just want the cheapest price, give me that person. Totally different situations. So your lifetime value, which we checked into this as well, because I just wanted to also know for this electrical services client, not only does the close rate change, what's the average lifetime value from somebody who from a customer for this electrical service business that comes in through Google Ads versus through the Angies List. What we found was, which it's a little difficult to find the lifetime value difference, because how do you know the lifetime value of a customer when the customers never stop buying? You can get a customer to come back 20 years from now, but up to the point in which we studied it, which we went back 5 years on this customer's data, because they've been doing both of these a long time before we started working with them as well. And we found out that the lifetime value of a customer that came from Angie's List was less than half of what it was from people that came from that Google ad. believe it or not. So the value of a customer is way, way, way less with at least Angie's List, but I'm going to tell you these are all pretty much in the same category. And if you don't believe me and you think Houzz is so much different than Angie's List, go ahead and do it. Just don't be the one that falls for this trick or scam, if you want to call it scam, in that looking with the cheap lead costs on the front end being what your draw, what the initial, how it initially looks good, and not analyzing what the true value of that lead is in terms of closing rates and what the customer's worth in terms of repeat business. And obviously the repeat business thing is hard, obviously to get, because you ain't going to know you got hosed by that until you've done several years of business already most of the time to know how many, did they come back or did they not? You can definitely check the closing rates right away. But just know I would be willing to bet my life that the lifetime value of a customer from all these sources, if you checked them out independently, is going to be less for sure, and probably less than half than what a Google Ads customer is going to be, having looked at it. The other reason why I can say that as well is because we did the same lifetime value analysis for a company in the junk removal space, also with Angie's List. And it was also less than half, respectively speaking, in terms of the customers that were generated from that, than what Google Ads was providing as well. Because we wanted to figure out the cost per lead was similar, Google Ads and Angie's List, but the customer didn't come back. Next time they needed to get junk removed, we didn't hear from them anymore. So therefore the lead wasn't worth it. Of course, the leads closed at a lower rate, but the closing rate wasn't as bad. Cost per lead, cost per job was similar on the front end, but the customer wasn't worth as much. And of course, we didn't get the organic traffic right along, which makes it much less valuable to us. And just to get on the SEO traffic thing, SEO traffic side, but I don't know if I indicated it before, but about half the profit you make from Google Ads is just from the ride along on the organic traffic you're going to get, given that the organic traffic, if you get 100 clicks a day on PPC, you might get 20 clicks a day from your organic as a result. And if you scale up to 200 clicks a day, you'll get like 40 clicks a day from the organic, because it will always be like 20% of the PPC traffic you get will be the organic. But the margins on your organic sales are so much higher because there's no marketing cost there, that it ends up being half of the profit, respectively speaking, that you get from PPC comes from in the form of the free organic traffic that you get that comes in along with it. So anyway, with all that said, if the cost per lead is the same, your actual cost of acquisition is double for Angie's List if you on the SEO traffic that you're not going to get. So anyway, it takes more sales resources to close the leads, no free SEO traffic when buying these leads, lower customer value in the long term. Of course, if you ever stop paying for the leads, you don't have a website that's going to consistently continue driving business. Immediately, everything's going to grind to a halt. And then lastly here, now the lead quality is even worse now with these services than it ever was. For a while there, these services actually were pretty decent with their lead quality. They even went to the point where, you could evaluate whether you wanted the lead or not. I want it from this area, and they need to be doing this, otherwise I'm not going to buy the lead. Now, they're sending you the lead regardless of what you want, and you have to pay for it regardless if they were outside your area or they do something that you don't even do. Why is that? Because they're forced to do that to keep their business alive. Back in the day, these review sites, Angie's List, so on and so forth, were more in demand. More people went to those sites directly to get their recommendations on who to use. But now, people are using Google's reviews and not relying on these sites as much. So what have they done in response? In response, because they have all these clients, of course, they have to get investors a return. They've went out and found other ways to generate leads for the people, their clients that are buying leads. So what they legitimately do is they go make a bullshit company that, you know, like looks like a family-owned plumbing company, and they'll run a local PPC campaign in every city across the U.S. Those leads, as they come in, get piped through Angie's List, and then that's what you're buying when you buy leads from Angie's List, thinking the Angie's List leads are coming from the site, Angie's List website, but really they're coming from this bullshit lead generation website that looks like a local plumber, but is not. And so it's like a bait and switch. So when you talk to them, there's no connection there, if you will. And you can check online. People are making these complaints left and right now. When they call the people, they don't know. I never contacted you through Angie's List. And so in my mind, this is a beginning of the end for these services. In the end, Google's going to crush these sites because people aren't going back to those sites. Why? Because Google's not ranking them as well. They have a direct competitor. And because they're not ranking as well, they need more traffic. And the traffic itself, because it's not the same quality, they're going to lose customers. And when they eventually figure this out, everybody hasn't figured it out, obviously, because everybody, there's enough people advertising with them. They're not dead yet, but it's eventually going to happen. And and I know what you're saying already is like, Corey, but what difference does it make? If they can generate leads, still get leads through PPC campaigns that they run for using these bullshit lead generation campaigns that look like a local service. The problem is, though, they're doing it on really shittily, let's just say, because it's hard to do a PPC campaign right if you don't know what you're doing, that is. If you run a campaign for a plumber, you have to do things like I mentioned on this channel, which is tedious and it takes time to make sure the leads you get are all relevant to plumbing and relevant to the exact plumbing that you do. If you were to try to generate leads for plumbing services for every plumbing company in the country, it would be hard because every plumbing company has a slightly different plumbing service. So if I generate leads for one plumber, it wouldn't work for another plumber. So when you're buying leads through Angie's List, you're buying plumbing leads a lot of times that, basically doing things that you don't do. So a good chunk of the leads, in other words, are not even sellable because this wholesale lead generation site that just generated leads for plumbing, we're just a grab bag of anything plumbing related. Partially because they have to sell one lead to many different types of plumbers because they're not good enough to be able to figure out how to generate a specific lead for a specific plumbing service and then selling that to a person who only wants those type of services on Angie's List because there's too much scale. But not only that, the campaigns that they're running on these lead generation sites are not targeted enough, and they're getting a bunch of bullshit leads like a typical person that doesn't know how to do Google Ads correctly are doing, in that people are looking for how to fix a broken toilet, and then they're getting to the site and they're filling out the form on accident, or they're, whatever, and then that's the lead that goes to through Angie's List, and that's what you're buying. So just by accident, they're generating the wrong leads, and those are the leads going through Angie's List. And so partially you're getting leads for services you don't do. Partially you're getting leads for people that didn't even want the service to begin with, and you're also partially getting leads for people that aren't in your service area, because the people who are looking for leads, through that lead generation campaign, supposedly are supposed to be from that area, but a lot of times they're not. And Angie's List, I'm talking the most about them, but they could be fixing this if they just got the PPC campaign they were running through this lead generation site narrowed down enough so it only got leads from a certain area and a certain service, and then pipe that over to somebody who only wanted leads from that area and a certain service, but they're not doing it. It's all jumbled up, it's mixed up, and this is what everybody's saying. So the leads, in other words, are not good anymore. It used to be profitable because most of the leads that you got at least were they wanted the right thing, they were in the right area, therefore it was okay. Now half the leads you get are outside the area. They want a different service than what you offer, and so whereas it might have been okay before, it's not okay now. So these numbers, and for all the reasons I said that you don't want to do these services before Google Ads, at least, it's even worse, by far worse now. So if you were looking for any kind of reason not to do it, the fact that most of these leads are generated by people who don't know what the hell they're doing should be enough of a reason, itself, to try to go the general direction of Google Ads first. But in general, if you're not offering a discount service or product, don't even go for it at all. And even if you are offering a discount product or service, I still recommend doing Google Ads first. Get a site that's good, get everything set up good, then go after these other services as kind of like icing on the cake. And it'll even work better for you because once you get on the phone with the person from Angie's List, the easiest way to help you sell is to say, hey, are you by the computer for a moment? Let me show you our website. And after you see our website, you'll be sold. And that's a great selling device to be able to use. Versus not having that, how am I going to feel comfortable about just talking to some random dude on the phone? It's a way different story. So you'll have a basis of making these leads work much better once you are forced to have made a website that converts well for Google Ads. Because if a website converts well enough for Google Ads to run a campaign, a high spending campaign, and make a profit from it, that website will be great to close people from these, where you're getting leads from these other services as well, if you will. So anyway, that's the main thing about these services here. To say one is better than the other, certainly I would trust Thumbtack more than anything because Google's able to get traffic from Google using this. And I trust the most that Google isn't trying some shady shit they don't need to. Houzz would be second based upon what I'm hearing. And then Angie's List, which is now Angies Leads, that bot home advisor, would be last on the list based upon what I've heard. In terms of what's profitable, what's not. And at the very least, they're at the very bottom of the pile. It was way more common in the past for clients to be using these services. It's getting to be less and less all the time, for the reason that I mentioned, that less people are using these services overall to begin with. And just with that, the return's not as good. The word's getting around. And even though setting up a website is hard, more people are getting the hang of it and more willing to do that and invest in the website than they are getting the services. Back 10 years ago, it was much harder to get a website done and figure that stuff out. Therefore, buying leads was more attractive of an option overall. There's a lot of other people selling leads as well, but it's all the same shit. If you're going to buy leads, you're not going to build up an asset. You're not going to get the free SEO traffic. The lead cost may be super cheap, but it's going to take so many leads to get a sale, and they're going to be able to be willing to spend less. And they're not going to come back. If you have repeat customers, they're not going to come back at near the rate as other customers will that have researched you online, found you, and then wanted to do business with you that way, because that's how a long-term customer is actually generated, at least from somebody who hasn't gotten a referral and has to pick somebody that they would want to do business with long-term. That is said, I'll wrap it up with that. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked the video, you should give it a thumbs up, and consider subscribing to this channel. We have a lot of other videos on this channel about how to not just avoid losing money, but how to make money on and using Google Ads, Facebook ads, and so forth. As mentioned on this video, I manage about 4 dozen PPC campaigns at any given time. So if you want to learn how to make money, you can do it from somebody who's actively doing that for our clients at any given time and actually guaranteeing the results, because that's what we do at our firm at Guaranteed PPC, where we guarantee our clients a certain amount of minimum results up front before we take any kind of fees at all. as a way of trialing the services. So if you want to learn from the best. It's the best information you're going to find on YouTube on how to actually make money with PPC. Well, we're not talking about what this campaign does or this campaign does, but like how to actually make money with what you're doing. So anyway, you should therefore subscribe. Beyond that, if you have any questions about anything I covered today, about any one of these providers or what you should do, leave me a comment below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a comment on this channel, usually within a couple days' time. You can also ask any questions about any other PPC stuff that you have that you're wondering about, whether it's about this topic or not, as I usually will be able to answer any questions and use my 15 years of experience doing PPC for companies I ran and company I run now to help you out. Beyond that, as a side, I do have a blog at guaranteeppc.com/blog where I offer more step-by-step advice on how to build PPC campaigns that are guaranteed to work. If you want to see extra information on stuff that I know about other than what we have on this channel, that's a great supplementary piece of place to get great information on how to make money with PPC that's in written form, also authored by myself. As a last note as well, I have a brand new program here at our PPC agency where we're offering turnkey PPC campaign templates. And what that is, if you're looking to start a new PPC campaign up or just struggling to get PPC to work, if we've done and gotten results in your market already, either before or currently, and you're in a market that doesn't compete with our clients, instead of building up a PPC campaign for yourself, you can literally buy our campaign templates that have all the ads, the keywords, the landing page template, all of it that already works in that market, and literally copy and paste the results into your campaign in your market and get similar results there. It's different than having to hire a PPC agency. You have a one-time cost and get a fairly good campaign in basically right away as soon as you get the campaign template in working in your ad accounts. And so we have campaigns in hundreds of markets like that. And so if you're interested and to see if we have a campaign template that gets good results, does millions in sales in your market, you can reach out to us and we'll let you know what we have available. And so if there's no conflict of interest, we'll be able to offer you a campaign template like that will work in your geographic market or territory. Beyond that, though, I'll wrap it up with that. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully I'll see you in my next video then, where we have another great strategy for you to use there. See you later.